Tuesday, June 28, 1966. Discourse on the Bhagavad Gita.
Discussing that those who have succeeded in their meditations get so much joy that it cannot be described. Upanishads speak of joy which cannot be described in words, where thought also cannot reach. In different words, the Gita describes the same thing, that joy which cannot be compared with anything earthly, by getting which one does not long for anything else. That is the state. But what is the result of the state on their lives? What effect their meditative life has on them? The Gita says, one who has become an adept in meditation has become united with the self. He becomes even-minded to all. He develops the spirit of same-sightedness. He does not or cannot make any distinction between a person and person. And he sees the self in all beings and all beings in the self. Rather, because of this realization, he cannot make any distinction between a person and a person. He does not make any distinction between a saint and a seer, between the high and the low. His perception is deeper. He sees the self in all beings. Not that he is not clever enough and he does not see. If he likes, he can see. But he just ignores them because he sees the self in all beings. And he sees and he understands all belong to the same Lord, to the same self. This attitude, this realization expresses itself in all his actions, in all his behavior. And therefore, he sees God in all and all in God. One who has realized that state, he never falls from the highest state. Usually, a person, however developed he may be, unless and until he has been completely transformed, he has to be cautious. He has to be cautious. But when a person has reached that state, when he sees God in all and all in God, he has no more chance of falling off from the high ideal. He remains steadfast in that state. He has no longer to think, this is right, no, I shall do it. This is wrong, I shall not do it. He has not to calculate, because he can no longer do anything wrong. He has been completely metamorphosed. The soul, this made of steel, has become golden, and with that one cannot do any harm. He is completely changed. He can no longer take any false step. He has not to calculate. That is the state of freedom. Otherwise, we always are afraid. We always worry. We have to worry. We have to be cautious. We have to struggle. They come to the state when there is no more struggle. The joy is its own security. Where love is an unerring light and joy is its own security. He has not to calculate. He has overflowing joy. The joy of great freedom, that is called real freedom. Otherwise, however great the freedom, we are all slaves. We are all slaves of our minds. Slavery is within. Outward freedom does not mean anything. When there is the inner freedom, at every place you are free. That is called real freedom. That is the goal of life, or rather spiritual life. We say spiritual life, for ordinary persons have no idea that there is such freedom. For them, freedom means political freedom, social freedom, and the freedom to go, to become reckless and wild. Ordinary persons think of freedom in that respect. But real freedom is the inner freedom. So much freedom that you can no longer do anything wrong. That is real freedom. That's the goal of spiritual life. So here it is said that he has reached that state. He sees God everywhere. He no longer sees duality. And then who will do harm to whom? And he sees God in everyone. Therefore, he has reverence for everyone. There's a talk between Swami Vivekananda and Ingersoll. Ingersoll did not believe in God. And he said, I must get the best out of this life as much as you can. From an orange, I shall get as much juice as it is possible. Swami Vivekananda says, I have another way of squeezing all the juices from the orange. I know that everyone is a God. Think of the joy of seeing the divinity in everyone. From that state I know death. I am beyond life and death, and I see God everywhere. Think of the joy of a person who sees God everywhere. It becomes a fact. It is not a philosophical aspiration or a philosophical idea. It becomes a fact. Sri Chaitanya said after his realization, this is the indication of a person that has known God. He has realized the ultimate reality. At that time, he doesn't see things movable or unmoving. Wherever he turns his eyes, he sees God everywhere. That is the criterion. He does not see human beings. He sees the divine in everyone. Of course, if they come to a lower state, those who have realized God, they can stay at any state. Sometimes they see outside world. Then when that indrawn outside world seems like a shadow, Ramakrishna used to say all these things are made of wax, as it were. Swami Vivekananda said these are like statues, mere sensation without exciting any emotion. In one of his letters, he spoke of his personal experience, what happens. And at a higher state, he becomes absorbed within himself. Everything is gone. As in deep sleep, the whole external universe has becomes absent. But in sleep, what happens? Nobody knows. But here, then they remember that it was a state of great joy, state of superconscious state. And what happens when such persons come to the human level, ordinary consciousness? In that state, they become identified with the sorrows and joys of the whole creation. They have no ego, they have no I sense at all. They have the consciousness of that universal self. So when they come to the human level, they become identified with the joys and sorrows of people. And as such, when they see sorrows, they become extremely sad. But it is not the sadness of ordinary persons. In a moment, it goes to the highest state. In a moment, it can go to the highest state, and it does. But when they come, they see human sufferings. And it is said only one propensity is left in them. Only one desire is left in them. They have no other desire for earthly things. Only desire, if it can be called desire at all. The desire that all may be happy. The desire for the welfare of the whole world. Their only prayer is that all the world may be happy. It is not simply sentimentalism or even a sentiment. It becomes a reality with them. So those who are active, they are active for the good, for the welfare of the world. They are active, or they become an instrument in the hands of God. They no longer think that agents, no longer think that they are doers. They are agents in the hands of God. And people see that they are so compassionate. The love is so intense. No earthly love can compare with the intensity of that love. It becomes so intense. Both intense and extensive, both. If you say intense, as if the love for a particular person, belonging to their group, belonging to their sect, belonging to their country or race. The love is unbounded. There is no limit. All persons find shelter in that great love. All persons who go to them at once feel so confident, at once feel so much at ease. They become at once so free with them that so close one can become with them. It has happened in the modern time, say, with the disciples of Ramakrishna. Western disciples would come, so they would at once feel so much at home. When the disciples of Swami Brahmananda came to Holy Mother, it was strange. She did not know English, she did not know language, their language. But without knowing their language, they made them so much at home. Sister Nivedita, just while writing letters to her, should sign as Koki, means baby. She was such an outstanding personality. The leaders of Indian thought, and also the British journalists, all would come to get directions from her. She lived in a dilapidated house in the underdeveloped parts of Calcutta. To our house would come all the important persons, or many important persons of India. They would get so much help from her. But when she would come to the Holy Mother, she was just like a child. Just think of the personality. Holy Mother had no book learning, did not know much about the outside world. That is what happens when one has become identified with the source of all love. And naturally, whoever comes in falls into that atmosphere. Absolutely no distinction. And as I said, when you go to such a person, it is so free you feel. Sometimes you might be awestruck, but sometimes you'll be so free, absolutely free. There is nothing which you cannot say to them. No hesitation. One whom we love very much, and one whom we know loves us very much, there cannot be any hesitation. And what becomes the outcome of that love? The persons are transformed. They do not see the weaknesses and failings in others, but their eyes are so penetrating that through this thick veil of ignorance, they penetrate into the depth of the heart of a person, where it is all divinity. They reach that state of divinity in the persons, however weak, however vile and wicked that person might be. And when they penetrate into the depth of the heart of a person and sees the divinity, it comes out, and the person becomes changed overnight, as it were. Because they can find out, they can see the divinity in all. That is the reason why they can change, why they can transform persons. Ordinary love is binding, brings attachment, leaves sorrow and sadness afterwards. In their love, there is no sadness and sorrow. The very remembrance will uplift you. Even if you come into contact with such a person for a moment, Shankaracharya said that moment of companionship with a man of God gives you the liberation. How does that happen? They may not even prescribe this and that rule. They change just the person. They have not to give a lecture. They have not have to give directions even sometimes. Just by look, by thought, they change persons. By thought, they change persons. Ramakrishna gave Vivekananda the superconscious state just by look or by touch. Sometimes he did by look simply, by thought even he did. The persons would come to him tormented by vagaries of minds. Ramakrishna just looked at him or her. He could change the tenor of thoughts of a person. It comes because one is at one with the source of all existence. One has become identified with the eternal existence. So that the Gita says, such a person who after his realization has become identified with all lives. That means we identify with the sorrows and joys of persons. They are the best of all saints. The highest state is when you see God everywhere. When you see God everywhere and you become identified with the eternal existence. That is the highest state. Once Ramakrishna asked Swami Saradananda, some of you have read his book. Ramakrishna asked him, what do you want? What is the spiritual goal? And he said, I want to see the divine existence everywhere. And he said, that is the last state, highest stage of spiritual development. When you have got the highest state, when you become one with the oneness, then you see really divinity everywhere. And you carry with you this overflowing joy. And wherever you go, people become happy. It is amazing. They change the atmosphere at once. They can change the atmosphere at once. Simply by their presence, they do that. Not only the atmosphere, thought patterns of people become different. Mind becomes calm. In their presence, one will become calm. One may go with the restless spirit, but one will become calm in their presence. This happened in the case of Madame Calvé, from our own writings of Swami Brahmananda we find. She was passing through a great state of restlessness and suffering, mental suffering. Somebody said, a friend of ours said, just go to Swami Brahmananda, just see. And she one day came. She was ushered into his presence. She sat there. Swami Brahmananda did not ask her any question. He says, what a terrible condition of mind you have. Afterwards she asked him, how did he know? Did anybody tell? He said, has anybody to tell? And she became so calm. Afterwards she wrote, he had the capacity to change the chaotic condition of mind into supreme state of serenity. He did not do this with any occult power, with miraculous powers. By the force of his purity of his heart and thought, she gave a vivid description. Otherwise, it's some mystery and other things. It's a mystery which you do it by some trick, and it passes away. Simply by the force, by the power of his purity and the intense quietness, he did that. It happens, this state happens more or less with all when one goes near the person whose thoughts are identified with the universal thought. One whose joy is so great, one whose realization is so wide, so high. So it is that such a person represents the highest state of realization. Now the most pertinent question is, after that Arjuna asks that question, what you say is all right, but I find it so difficult to control my mind. It is much more difficult, it seems, than controlling the blowing wind. What about that? In the Gita, Arjuna asks some very pertinent questions, representing the whole of humanity, as it were. After reading all these verses, then the important thing comes, we are down to earth. What about our condition? How to do that? How to get that state of concentration, or that state of realization? The answer is, yes, he said, yes, true. The mind is restless, very difficult to control. But it is not altogether out of control. It can be controlled by practice and constant discrimination. These are the two methods. Discrimination between what is right and wrong, and to try to give up what is wrong, and practice in meditation. Attempt at meditation. Practice is necessary. You cannot get it at once. Ramakrishna used to say it does not come overnight, all of a sudden. It comes if some great soul touches it. But that also to keep that up, it requires hard spiritual practice. So he said that it does not come in a day. You have to try from day to day. Then gradually you will get into the practice. Only important thing is practice and discrimination. Discrimination means to be alert always, to be vigilant. What is right and wrong? You may not be able to do always what is right. Do you know that is right? Do you know that it is wrong? And you may be forced to do thing which is wrong. That is the problem of human beings. With the tallest of persons, we do what we do not like to do. But if we can detect that this is wrong, that is at least a step. Many persons have no idea what is wrong. Even if you say this is wrong, they will argue, no, this is not wrong. I believe it. I think so, as if they can think. So there must be discrimination, constant alertness. So by practice of discrimination, and you will become sensitive to right and wrong. And if you have a spiritual aspiration, it will not do any harm. Otherwise, you find that it is wrong and you cannot do the right thing. It becomes difficult. It becomes a great struggle. Discrimination and practice, prayer and meditation. It is said more than discrimination, practice is more powerful. Discrimination, it is a street cleaning. You can find out these are things wrong. But practice is positive thing. Meditation on God or meditation on some spiritual subject or prayer. Therefore, we said simple two things. Yes, it is hard to control, but it can be done by discrimination and spiritual practice. Practice should be continued. It takes time. You cannot get a thing before its time. If you sow a seed, if you plant a seed, then it takes time for a mango to grow and for the blossoms and the fruits to ripen. So it will come in right time. Of that one is sure. Of that, the spiritual experience of all saints says that one will get the result. It is sure. In Patanjali's Yoga book, the same thing. Exactly how to control the mind, the same two things. The discrimination and practice. Yes, a person might not have intense spiritual yearning. There are three kinds of yearning: intense, medium, and very poor intensity. Those who have intense yearning, they will succeed more quickly. It is natural. But those whose yearning is not so great, medium degree, but they through practice will turn their yearning into an intense degree. Those who are at the lowest level, if they constantly try, gradually they will develop. So there is a possibility for everyone. One commentator just raises a question. In ordinary things come the impressions of past life and so on, or law of karma. Law of karma relates to things with earthly desire, but not with spiritual desire. For spiritual desires you go do, and you are sure to get the result. If you can continue, even if you have no liking in the beginning, but you just go on, by mere steadfastness, things will begin to come. If you do not like a thing, just if you do it from day to day, then you will begin to like it. In the same way, if you just continue it, then it will come. Sooner or later, it is sure to come. As a great teacher will say these things, that you do the practice, and the result is sure to come. Those great teachers who are sure of themselves, who speak from their personal experience to say it is sure you will get the result. It may take time in some case. But what about those? Another pertinent question Arjuna asks. What about those persons with great desire, strove for spiritual progress, but before they had succeeded, they died? What will be their future? Have they any future? Their ship has sunk, as it were, in the mid-ocean. He is neither here nor there. Will he lose this here and hereafter both? Here he did not go for worldly pursuits. He went for spiritual things, but he did not succeed. Then he does not think that his future, he has achieved anything by which his future will be bright. What will be the condition of such a person? Sri Krishna answers very affectionately, the very words are so. My child, a doer of good will never come to grief. Sister Nivedita once asked Swami Brahmananda, perhaps while they were coming by boat from India to England or England to America, all of a sudden she asked him that question. What about those persons who fail? Swami Brahmananda quoted this verse from the Gita. Say, my child, a doer of good never will come to grief. When made an attempt, he has acquired something. There is something to his credit. Nothing will be lost. Even who has thought a bold dream, that will have its value. Those who have made an attempt, has achieved something. As such, there is nothing as failure in spiritual life. Everything will remain to one's credit. Not only that, the Gita says, in the next life, one will be born in better circumstances. Because of his yearning, he has created a condition of his mind. That condition of mind will bring him to better, more favorable circumstances. And thereby he will find better opportunities. And in that life, perhaps he will succeed. In any case, according to the intensity, according to progress made in each life, then one will afterwards, one will succeed completely. And as such, this path is of infinite value. This path is better than the path of those persons who study scriptures and do not put into practice. Better than the path of those persons who do works but do not do with right motive. Better than those persons who do spiritual practice but do not develop earnestness. So if one is sincere and follows these things, these directions, he says, it will be easier for all. But the last verse of this chapter is most interesting. By saying all these things, he says, but of all spiritual aspirants, following different paths, those who love me, love God, with earnestness and sincerity, they are the best people. That they will get the greatest benefit. All of a sudden it comes to the last verse. In this chapter, first it spoke of karma, then meditation, then the results of meditation, and so on. And in the last verse said, of all spiritual aspirants who love God sincerely and earnestly, they are the best. You see, when you love a person, really genuine love, you can get things from him quickly. So here it is said. But in the book on yoga, Patanjali's yoga book, we find exactly the same thing. In yoga book, Patanjali's yoga aphorisms, details descriptions of the conditions of mind, or what happens when you meditate. It's detailed, abstruse, difficult. But now and then, there are verses, aphorisms, 3 or 4. In one sense, it is said, or by loving God. So all these things on one side, on another side, or by loving God, you would get everything. And Swami Pavitrananda, in one of his letters, he has done all these spiritual practices. In a letter to someone said, not necessarily one has to go through all this complicated process. He writes in a letter, and he quotes this aphorism, as in the yoga book says, or by having sincere love for God, it becomes easy. So here it is said, yes, this is better than those persons who do works without any motive, spiritual outlook. Then better than those persons who do spiritual practices, but they have not desire for earnestness, or those persons who simply read scriptures. Say the yoga method is better than they, but the easiest thing is easiest will be the path for those who have developed real love for God. It is said if you are sincere and earnest, you will get realization at no time. It is interesting, Shankaracharya, in his standard book on monism, Vivekachuraman, he says, of all the paths to liberation, the best is the path of devotion, as he says. But his description, his definition of devotion is a bit twisted. He says devotion here means in the seeking the knowledge of the self. But that is not the orthodox definition of devotion. But in any case, his monism also is mixture of devotion. He speaks very often of devotion. In any case, in a standard book, he says, of all the paths to liberation, the best is the path of devotion. Devotion means search for the knowledge of truth, of Atman. In any case, search in what way? When search in a devotional way, not in an intellectual way, through emotion, through devotion, it becomes a devotion. In any case, so, and if we can combine all these things, then it becomes all the more easy. Swami Vivekananda said, unfurl all the sails. Gita speaks of the harmony of different paths, karma, bhakti, jnana, and yoga. So here in one chapter we find talks of karma and jnana. Karma, or he speaks of jnana because he speaks of oneness, and yoga. In the last he says, of all the paths, the path of devotion is easiest and the best. Let us stop. Anybody is welcome to ask any question. Let us stop.